At number 10, we have King Henry IV's head. I want to be such a badass in my life that when I die, people put in such an effort to make sure I stay dead. Either that or they do some sort of Weekend at Bernie situation with strings on me and I'm dancing around. Well, when King Henry IV was assassinated, they cut off his head and buried it in another location. The location was a mystery to everyone until 2010 when it was found in some tax collector's attic. The dude had a 17th century cranium stored up there like old baby pictures. This guy bought it off an elderly couple. The elderly couple snagged the head in an auction in the late 19th century. Okay, I want to add to what I want to live like. I want to be such an awesome person in my life that people are selling my body parts off at an auction. It'll be like, next up, we got Che Dorena's prize scrotum. It said that if you pull off one of the hairs, any wish will come true.
Coming in at number 9 is the tiny alien, and yes, I found this one after pulling one of those scrotum hairs and wishing on it. Honestly, I don't even know with this one, so back in 2003 in the Atacama Desert of Chile, archaeologists found a 6-inch tall mummified skeleton with a pointed head. And if you see the picture of this thing, it's actually tiny, like it's the size of my foot more or less, and now I can't tell if I've exposed that my feet are big or that this thing was tiny. My feet are normal sized, I swear. Either way, after close examination, researchers found the skeleton to have the bone density of a 6-year-old kid despite its miniature size. Even scientists were like, could this be our first ever alien specimen? Sadly not. After more and more thorough investigation, they found out the skeleton was in fact human after all, probably related to the indigenous Chileans. There were 7 different mutations in her growth genes, which most likely explains her overall smallness, but it is a sight to see. Honestly, I've never seen a skull shaped like that, and I'm not throwing shade at all. It's interesting.
Alright, your favorite host is back, or back with number 8, head on a stick. Way back in the day when we were still swinging around clubs and we didn't really know what to do with dead bodies, cremating someone and then throwing their ashes over the parking lot at Cheesecake Factory by their request is a very new thing. Well, these Stone Age dudes thought taking heads and mounting them on sticks was the best course of action. An archaeological dig in Sweden found a bunch of heads mounted on sticks that dated back way before the Greeks were laying around with rock hard abs. It's unknown why these cavemen decided to shish kebab these skulls. They might have been enemies, and mounting the heads to sticks could have been a warning to other people not to come around or you're gonna end up like this head on a stick. Or it could have been a nice thing. Maybe when your buddy dies, you put his head on a stick so you can bring him around and give him little forehead kisses forever. It did seem like some sort of ritual, because where they found the mounted heads, there were loads of animal bones scattered everywhere.
Filling our number 7 slot is the Apple Store, and no, I'm not about to mention the 13th century Apple Store that archaeologists randomly found, and with it the iPhone -10C or X or whatever you want to call it. So basically, back in 2013 the company was breaking ground in Madrid in order to build another Apple Store because clearly they thought they didn't have enough. While construction crew were excavating the area, they found the remnants of a 15th century hospital just casually. The hospital was in use way back in the 1400s and treated victims of the plague. It was demolished in 1854 and sealed below the street until the Apple Store came along. When asked about the situation, Apple said they want to incorporate the ruins of the hospital into the glass box store design, so you know, if you walk into the Madrid store you'll find the iPhones on your left, earpods on your right, and the hospital ruins and corpses way at the back. Do ask for assistance from an employee if need be. And I am your favorite host.
Back again, guys, with number 6, smallpox scabs. You go to the library and you try to make your brain smarter, and then the only thing that happens is you come in contact with an ancient disease. You pause your Netflix and pick up books only to get punished for it. This is like when there was E. coli in the romaine lettuce. Well, in 2003, Suzanne Caro went to check out some books at the Santa Fe College Library. She picked out some old Civil War books because she's a fun time, and in the book there was an envelope. Because she's a curious little devil, she decided to open them up and found a bunch of scabs. Scabs in an envelope? Must be my birthday. She found out by reading this old-timey book that the scabs were taking off patients with smallpox during the Civil War. So she kept them, then dipped them in chocolate and served them to her friends at a dinner party. I'm just kidding, guys. She called the Center for Disease Control because she's not as imaginative as I am.
Coming in at number 5 is the letter. During the demolition of a fireplace in a house located in Caversham, builder Lewis Shaw found a letter. The letter was written sometime in the 40s by a little boy called David. I know you were hoping it was like some sort of murder confession letter or a steamy cheating confession, but alas, it was just a letter to Santa Claus. In it, he wrote, "Dear Father Christmas," that was quite formal. Anyway, "Dear Father Christmas, please can you send me a rupee annual and a drum box of chalks, soldiers and Indians, slippers and any little toys you have to spare. Love, David." Well, any little toys you have to spare, how cute is that? Like, mate, he has a factory run by elves. He has more than a little to spare. Lewis really wanted to track David down to give him the letter, so he actually made a hashtag Find David media campaign and actually managed to find him alive and well. The internet. There you go. You'd assume David would have been like, "Bro, I wrote this 60 years ago, you think I care now?" But he was actually quite surprised and found it quite cute considering his kids now either asking for a motorbike or a bunch of Barbies. Chalk and slippers just won't cut it in this day and age, David. Get with it.
At number 4 on the list, we have the Essex Sarcophagus. As Stephen Drake was checking out an old home in the middle of being touched up, while walking through, he came to a big gap in the wall. He decided to peek through. Now, if this was a horror movie, this would be the point where something jumps into his eye and sucks out his brain. But instead of having his brain sucked out, he found a 3,000-year-old sarcophagus that was left there by the previous owner. The guy who used to own the home was now dead, so Stephen took the sarcophagus to get carbon dated, and it turns out the thing was legit. I hope Stephen got a fat payday for that. Some weird stuff about this is no one knows where the dead owner got this thing from, and there also was no body inside the sarcophagus, so no one knows where the mummy body went.
Filling our number 3 slot is the baby. I can't even wrap my head around why someone would even do this or how they would do it, but here we go. Back in 1850, a Parisian couple were getting some work done on their home. Workers came in and started digging up the floor and walls, and a mummified baby just fell out of the wall. Legit, they were probably like, "Is this yours?" Obviously, the couple was suspected of killing the baby right away, but they were quickly exonerated. The doctor used changes in corpses and flies to determine they didn't do it. First off, how on earth do you put a baby dead or alive in a wall? Forget dead, how do you have the heart to put a live baby in a wall and board it back up? Secondly, how are flies good murder conviction evidence? Like, am I the only one that thinks this is sus? This is sus, guys. And sadly enough, cases of mummified babies are so common even now. I mean, 2 were found in 2007, and those are just the 2 that I know of. I'm sure if I researched it more, I'd find a bunch. This just hurts my heart, I'm sorry. Che's here for comic relief, and I'm here for the morbid stories.
Hey guys, I'm back to bring a smile to your face after Eamon bummed you out. On number 2, we have the mass grave of Tomb, County Galway. Okay, maybe I'm gonna bum you out too. In an archaeological dig, I bet you want to find like dinosaur bones or old weaponry, maybe even some fossilized dinosaur poop. That's a real thing, you should look it up. Underneath the former home for single mothers in Tomb, County Ireland was the remains of 796 babies. What the hell? It was a super baby grave. This is like something that came out of a Rob Zombie movie. Like, it's literally almost House of a Thousand Corpses. Between the years of 1925 and 1961, the home was run by the Bon Secure nuns, and it was a place where single mothers could go to get support. However, the nuns would often neglect the children which they were left to take care of. This would lead to them dying, and then they would wrap them in a sheet and dump their bodies in a septic tank. When the discovery was made, a home was built over top of the burial site to pay homage to the infants. That was so chilling, I never want to think about it again. Now we gotta go back to Eamon. Oof.
Hi guys, I'm back. Hopefully you don't find me as dull as Che thinks you do. And finally, at number 1 is post-death partum. So yeah, you probably do find me as dull as Che thinks you do. Once upon a time, 1,300 years ago, in a small Italian town of Imola, a woman died. And that's the end of number 1. No, I'm kidding. Archaeologists found said woman in 2010, and the skeletal remains seemed odd. Her skeleton was fine, but archaeologists found a strange cluster of tiny bones in between her legs, which obviously turned out to be the remains of her fetus that she somehow gave birth to after her death. If we investigate this further CSI style, she was buried face up, so that implied she was purposely buried. She was in her late 20s, early 30s, and her baby was only 2 weeks away from being full term. sperm. The baby's legs were still inside the mum, but their head and upper body was born after she died, and that's referred to as a coffin birth. Did you guys know that was a thing? Because I certainly did not know that was a thing. What happens is that gas builds up inside the dead woman, which pushes the fetus out of the birth canal, something that has rarely ever been seen in archaeological history. And that's not even the end of it. They also found a hole drilled into the woman's skull, which was common back then to relieve things like head injuries, headaches, or to get rid of evil spirits. If any of you need that treatment after listening to Che, hit me up.
Starting off this countdown, we have the head transplant. So scientists have discovered a way to transfer a head from one body to another. I know, it's crazy. Let me explain. So Italian surgeon Sergio Canavero managed to attach a smaller rat to a larger rat and still kept the rat alive. The rat was still fully functioning. He also claimed to have successfully done this with dogs, and in 2016 he did this on a monkey. Apparently he does this by attaching the spinal cords together, and now he's looking for real-life people to be a part of his experiment. He wants to be able to do this on humans. Maybe that's why Walt Disney had his head frozen for so many years. He's waiting to be attached to another, younger body. Just kidding. But seriously, this is terrifying. In our 9th spot, we have the alien DNA. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and make sure you stick around right to the end of the video because I am shouting out your weird comments. In 2014, it was discovered that DNA can survive re-entry from space. Basically, Swiss and German scientists put DNA on the exterior of a rocket. The rocket then did a trip around space and back to Earth. And they found that the DNA on the rocket survived. Meaning, if there is life out there and they sent a message to Earth, their alien DNA would successfully survive on Earth. This has scared a lot of people because they think an alien invasion is now possible, which is pretty creepy, not gonna lie. Also, that means intergalactic bacteria and disease can also survive its trip to Earth, which can threaten humanity. Isn't that great? Moving on to number 8, we have the deadly snails. So, snails are slow, tiny creatures that no one really fears, but maybe we should. Apparently, snails are one of the most deadly animals in the world. Why? Well, freshwater snails kill up to 20,000 people a year. People die after drinking water contaminated with snail eggs. If you do this, then you develop a condition called schistosomiasis. And guess what? These snails can live 3 to 10 years in a host's body. In some cases, they have lived 40 years inside of a person, which is disgusting, and I never want to swim in a lake ever again. Just kidding, but seriously, add snails to the list of things that I'm afraid of. In our 7th spot, we have the viruses. The advancements we have made in medicine is quite fascinating. Over the years, millions of lives have been saved as a result. But I got some bad news. Some microbes are evolving so fast that scientists can't find a way to fight them. On top of that, viruses are mutating constantly. They keep having to find new antibiotics and vaccines to defeat them. In fact, some strains of bacteria are becoming drug resistant. It's quite a scary time right now. I mean, we are witnessing this all firsthand. In our 6th spot, we have the zombie invasion. Over the years, the fear of a zombie outbreak has been on the rise. We can thank The Walking Dead and other shows for that. But in all seriousness, zombies can become a thing. According to scientists, there could be a cordyceps out there that could cause this to happen. Cordyceps is a type of parasitic fungi that attacks a host and then takes over the host. Usually we see this happen to insects, but scientists say it could happen to humans too. Dun dun dun! If it does happen, then it would turn us into brain-dead zombies. But they did say the chances of this happening are 1 out of a million though. Still, the fact they say it might happen is terrifying, okay? There could be zombies. Scientists said it. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the multiple Earths. In 2014, NASA discovered several interesting planets. One of them is named Kepler 452b. Don't know who named that, but they should be fired. It is a planet that closely resembles Earth. In fact, it's the most Earth-like planet outside of our solar system. In fact, NASA estimates that there are 1 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way alone. meaning there has to be life on those planets. Scary fact is, the life on those planets might be way more advanced than us. They just know that there has to be other intelligent life forms out there somewhere, which is cool, but also very daunting. Like, they could take over Earth if they really wanted to. Moving on at number 4, we have the caterpillar zombie virus. This is a pretty scary virus that targets caterpillars. I'm glad it can't transfer over to humans, and you'll understand why. Basically, caterpillars that have this virus will eat until they get so fat. They just keep eating until their body can't take it anymore, and they literally explode. When they explode, they spray guts everywhere. And any caterpillars that get sprayed will then contract this virus as well. So they literally eat themselves to death until they burst. Imagine if humans got this. Like, you're walking down the street and next thing you know, someone explodes on you. That's disgusting. Moving on at number 3, we have the junk food. In 1948, researchers discovered just how bad junk food really is for you. In a study with over 5,000 residents, they were looking at the risk factors for heart disease. That's when they found people that ate good tasting food like fries, ice cream, brownies, chips, you get it. They were more prone for heart disease as well as diabetes and stroke. The researchers discovered just how disturbing the effects junk food and fast food have on the body. Which is sad, because I just want to eat chips and burgers all day and not have to worry. Moving on to number 2, we have the plastics, and I'm not talking about the girls from the Mean Girls. If you know, then you know. Okay, we all know that plastics are bad for the environment and that they're polluting the earth. But in 2014, another shocking discovery was made about plastics. They discovered that BPA found in most plastic products act like synthetic estrogen. This means that constant exposure to it can lead to fertility problems, or even cause tumors in women's uteruses. Long-term exposure can also lead to breast cancer, heart attacks, and diabetes. Basically, by drinking and eating food from these plastic containers, you're ingesting these chemicals into your body. So it could be slowly killing you and you don't even know it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Parasite. If you're eating something right now, I suggest you put your food away because you're about to lose your appetite. Trust me, this next discovery is very disgusting. So basically, there was a Russian woman that discovered a small lump below her left eye. She didn't really think anything of it until the lump moved. It moved above her eye, and then next thing you know, there was a bump on her lip. That's when she reached out and got medical attention. Turns out, she had a thread-like worm living in her body. This is known as Dirofilaria repens. It typically infects dogs, cats, foxes, and other wild animals. But turns out, they can transfer to humans too. How lovely. It can be spread by mosquito bites. Then this worm will live in your tissue under your skin. Ugh, no thank you.
Starting off at our number 10 spot, we have DNA. In the 1860s, Swiss chemist Johann Friedrich Meissner was able to give a name to the molecule that is now known as DNA, which set up huge and very important scientific advancements to come. He initially set out to research white blood cells, which are of course a very key component of our immune system. When he carried out experiments that required adding salt solutions, he noticed that once he added acid, a substance separated from the solution. At first, he thought he had discovered something that was coming from the nucleus of the cell, and while he knew it was an important discovery, he had no idea just how important. He was a major perfectionist, however, so he was quite hesitant to tell others of his findings, so it was a few decades until his discovery was fully appreciated by the scientific community. After this, scientists were able to research further what he had discovered to give us all our much better understanding of DNA that we now have. Those scientists include people like Albrecht Kossel, who in 1881 was able to isolate the 5 nucleotide bases that are the building blocks of DNA, or Walter Fleming, who discovered a fibrous structure within the nucleus of the cell, which he named chromatin, but we now know as chromosomes. This is all to say that Johann's almost accidental discovery changed science forever, and not only was the discovery a shock to the scientific community, but also to Johann himself. In our number 9 spot today, we have penicillin. penicillin. As it turns out, penicillin, which is an antibiotic that has saved most of us a lot of pain and suffering, was a bit of an accidental discovery, so it was a shock to both the world and the guy who created it. In 1928, Scottish biologist Alexander Fleming was returning home from a vacation. When he returned home and went back to work, he found a petri dish that he had left dirty was full of bacteria and mold, as I'm sure we would all expect it to be. With this gross discovery, however, came the realization that the bacteria was everywhere, except for where the mold was. After some further testing and further research, he realized that the mold was responsible for killing off this bacteria, and he was able to identify the mold as being from the genus Penicillium. This is what led to further testing and creation of the most used antibiotic, which is incredibly effective at curing a wide variety of bacterial ailments. In our number 8 spot today, we have bacteria resistance. Okay, so aside from penicillin, there are an array of other antibiotics and vaccines that have been created that have not only helped us survive as a human race, but have also improved our quality and length of life. This is all amazing and truly helpful, but the scientists who study things like this also made a scary discovery that while these treatments are doing great work, there are some microbes who are working just as hard, and they might be evolving faster than we can fight them. This is why the flu shot is created yearly, as the previous shot is ineffective against next year's bug, or why hospitals are seeing some people have a simple cut turn into a potentially limb or even life-threatening situation because of the antibiotic-resistant staph bacteria, or how there are illnesses jumping from animals to humans, or even how tuberculosis is seemingly making a comeback. These kinds of discoveries are extremely important because it can help us calculate next steps, but it's also incredibly frightening because while we might still be ahead for now, how long is that really gonna last? In our number 7 spot today, we have electricity. Many people will credit Ben Franklin with the discovery of electricity, as many of us have heard of his little kite experiment. In this experiment, he wanted to prove that lightning was electricity, so he tied a metal key to a kite during a lightning storm, and sure enough, just as he thought, electricity from the storm clouds transferred to the kite and flowed down the string to give him a little shock. I mean, this is a video called Discoveries in History that left people stunned, and I think an electric shock definitely counts as someone being stunned. This led to many other scientists being able to build upon his work and discovery, which all led us to where we are now. I mean, who would have thought that a key on a kite would have helped me film this video with these lights and this camera? There has been evidence that ancient people may have dabbled in electricity themselves, but the extent of it is very much a mystery. Talking about this little experiment is certainly not to undermine the work and intelligence of those who came before Benjamin, because that work is just as important. In our number 6 spot today, we have ancient cave art. Just a few short years ago, researchers were in a cave in Sulawesi, Indonesia, when they found some cave paintings. This wouldn't have been a discovery that we would have put on this list until it was realized that this cave art was actually 44,000 years old, making it some of the oldest art that has ever been found. The art depicts some types of buffalo as well as wild pigs, and there are some human-like figures that appear as well, but they are way smaller and also have some animalistic characteristics such as tails and snouts. It appears as though it is some sort of hunting scene, but it is also unclear whether these paintings were made to represent a single story or if they were a series of images made over a course of time. While this painting is not the oldest art we've ever found, if it does in fact depict one single scene, it would be the oldest story ever found. In our number 5 spot today, we have this ancient sword. We've all heard the story of Excalibur, but in 2018, an 8-year-old girl had basically the same experience, only a little different. This little girl was playing in a Swedish lake when she stepped on something that felt kind of like a stick. She of course bent down to pick it up, and she said she was going to put it back in the water, but once she saw a handle and a pointy bit at the end, she instead held it up and said, "Daddy, look, I found a sword." Of course, her dad came rushing over and grabbed it from her. Once scientists got a look at the sword she found, they were able to date it back at least 1,000 years, saying that it could even be from somewhere around the 5th or 6th century AD, which would place it even before the Viking era by a few hundred years. After another artifact from around the same time period was found in the same area, it drew scientists to the possible conclusion that perhaps this was once an area of sacrifice. For a while, the little girl had to keep her discovery a secret and only told her best best friend, but once the news broke, she was allowed to tell all of her classmates and her teacher, who threw the class a party where they watched and listened to all of her radio and TV interviews she did about her amazing discovery. In the number 4 spot today, we have the ancient shipwreck. In 2018, a team of researchers were searching an area of the Black Sea when they stumbled upon a shipwreck. While this is of course interesting, it's not exactly the most shocking thing to find a shipwreck in the sea, but here's the thing. This shipwreck is now believed to be the oldest ever found, dating back to around 400 BC, and it was found still intact despite the 2,400 years it's been. The mast, the rudder, the rowing benches, and even some of the ship's contents were still intact, just waiting to be discovered. Apparently part of the reason for the preserval because of the fact that the water in the depths of the Black Sea is anoxic, or free of oxygen, which is something that I am shocked to discover. The ship is extremely similar to the one depicted on the Siren vase, which is located in the British Museum. One of the researchers on the team who located the wreck explained that it's like another world. It's when the remote operated vehicle drops down through the water column and you see this ship appear in the light at the bottom, so perfectly preserved it feels like you step back in time. In our number 3 spot today, we have an early human jawbone. The discovery of a human jawbone completely threw off what scientists and researchers once had mapped out as the timeline for when it was once believed that the early humans left Africa. Before this discovery, the oldest Homo sapien fossil that had ever been found outside of Africa was estimated to be somewhere from 90,000 to 120,000 years old, which helped to create some sort of timeline of how things for the early humans might have gone. Just a few short years ago, however, scientists found an upper left jawbone in a cave in Israel, and they were able to date these remains back 177,000 to 194,000 years ago, suggesting that humans may have migrated out of Africa 50,000 years earlier than what was once believed. It was a huge discovery that only takes us a step closer to learning the origins of our human race. This is just one example that highlights the changes in beliefs and views on our evolutionary origins and our migration throughout the old world all those years ago. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Earth orbits the Sun. This is something that I still think even today people have a hard time wrapping their heads around, and that is that the Earth is not the center of our universe. I am. Just kidding. Standing on the Earth feels so stable and stationary, so it feels so hard to believe that we could be orbiting around something and not the other way around. But alas, it is true. When Copernicus proposed that the planets orbit the sun, his colleagues and peers thought he was losing his mind bringing up such an absurd idea. Even Galileo years later got the same kind of grief for bringing up the idea, and he was able to provide evidence for his theory. Still, people were just not having it. Of course, part of this was the church and the scripture, which claimed that the sun revolved around the earth, but let's leave the religious beliefs to the church and the science to scientists. Everything that goes on in space truly is very hard to conceptualize and really wrap your head around, so I do understand the hesitancy to just change the way of thinking, but we have had hundreds of years to kind of mull it over, so I feel like we should really be all on the same page now. In our number 1 spot today, we have the ingredients of the universe. To piggyback off of the last space point, we have the discovery of what space is made out of. A concept I've really never sat down to think about, but one that now has me spiraling into the abyss. So when we think of space, we usually think first of planets, stars, galaxies, dust, black holes, you know, space stuff. But what happens when a scientist lets you know that all of that stuff only makes up about 4% of what is in space? Well, you start spiraling like me, because what is the rest? Well, to answer that, around 20% of the universe is dark matter. I don't know what that is, but scientists have a bit of an idea. Well, Olivia, that's still not totaling to 100%, so what else is out there? Well, most amazing top 10 viewer, apparently the rest is dark energy, and here's the worst part about that. Your guess on what that is just as good as mine, and the scientist's guess is only more educated, but still, no one really knows. So now, maybe, if you didn't previously know this, you'll also be on a trip to Spiral Town just like me. The discovery of dark energy combined with the lack of answers on what it could be is, to me, about as shocking as it gets. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have this scary water discovery. Researchers at Michigan State University have been working to try and provide us with a worldwide view on how climate change will affect our water availability. We obviously need water to survive, and we are quickly running out of it, and climate change certainly isn't helping. In an article posted to the National Science Foundation on February 2nd, these researchers announced their discovery that if we continue on the same trajectory we're on, by the end of the 21st century, the global land area and population facing extreme drought could more than double. This is an extremely dire discovery, and researchers have said that if things don't change, areas of the southern hemisphere where water scarcity is already a problem will be disproportionately affected, and that it could affect food security and escalate human migration and conflict. This study definitely shed a light on a problem that we don't always think about. In our number 9 spot today, we have this AirPod mishap. Bradford Gauthier woke up in the morning feeling fine, except for one bizarre thing. When he tried to drink a glass of water, he found that he was unable to actually swallow the water down. He realized he felt a bit of pressure in his chest and thought, oh, maybe my throat is just dry, since he had been shoveling snow the night before. Bradford had fallen asleep with his AirPods in, so he went to look for them lost in the bed so that he could get them back into their case to charge. After searching for quite a while, he realized he could only find one, and that's when other members of his household began suggesting what might have happened to the other one. After an emergency room visit and an x-ray, doctors discovered exactly what Bradford's family assumed had happened. In his sleep, Bradford had accidentally swallowed one of the AirPods, and it was lodged in the lower part of his esophagus. Luckily, he was able to quickly get it removed, and apparently it actually still works, despite the volume being a bit lower. In our number 8 spot today, we have this horrible Vancouver Island discovery. One Vancouver Island resident made a pretty terrible discovery recently as she was walking along a beach in Nanaimo. As she was walking, she unfortunately came across a sea lion that didn't have its head. Of course, this is never a good discovery, but matters were made worse when she ended up finding 5 sea lions in total with the same devastating injury. A marine mammal expert for the area explained that the injuries are definitely deliberate, which means that there is someone or some people who are going around doing this to the sea lions, which is absolutely horrible. The expert also explained that some of these sea lions were Steller sea lions, which are an at-risk species, which certainly makes the crime even worse than it already was. There will be an investigation into these discoveries, and hopefully they'll be able to figure out what exactly is going on there. In our number 7 spot today, we have this creepy garbage bag discovery. A New Zealand resident was walking along one day when they came across 2 full garbage bags. This can be a sign of something pretty gruesome, so they decided to call the police. Once the bags were open, it was confirmed that luckily they weren't filled with human remains, as was the worst case scenario, but they did contain something pretty unsettling. These garbage bags were full of mannequin heads. I'm sure this probably terrified the person who opened the bags when they first took a look. I'm glad it wasn't anything harmful, but there definitely is something weird about this discovery that feels very ominous. At the end of the day, I am just glad that no one got hurt. In our number 6 spot today, we have this Nebraska semi-truck discovery. Nebraska police pulled over a semi-truck on January 22nd after it had been clocked going 85 miles per hour in a 65 miles per hour zone, and it was also said that the driver wasn't quite in his lane. Upon further inspection, police discovered that not only did the driver appear to be under the influence, his truck was also carrying a few illicit substances. Authorities revealed that the truck had several hidden concealment points, which is consistent with the substance transport. Of course, the driver ended up being taken into custody where he is awaiting bail, and the truck was towed from the scene for further investigation. In our number 5 spot today, we have this pre-approved vaccine controversy. Since the start of the pandemic, companies have been in a race to create a vaccine that can help return our world to normal. Of course, now in 2021, there are a few options for vaccines that are being distributed, while other companies are in the trial testing phases to ensure that the vaccines are safe for humans. These testing trials are absolutely critical, as there is a level of trust with these kinds of things that is imperative to their success. Well, a biotechnology company recently came under fire after their COVID vaccine, called Covaxin, received regulatory approval from the Drugs Controller General of India, despite it not having gone through stage 3 trials completely. It was only approved for emergency use, so it's not likely it was about to be widely distributed, but it certainly feels safer to wait until it is gone and fully completed all testing trials. In our number 4 spot today, we have this real estate agent creepy discovery. A West Virginia real estate agent was looking around a house she was selling when she came across something that literally made her scream. She unsuspectingly opened the basement door and found a statue of a boy, which certainly would make anyone jump at first. If you thought you were alone and opened a door to this, for a split second, I am sure it would spook you right out, as you might think it was a real person. Aside from that, the statue looks very creepy, like it honestly could be cursed. This statue with the backdrop of an unfinished basement definitely creeps me out just looking at the photo of it. The realtor explained that although she is used to seeing weird and funny things in houses, this is the first time one has scared her so much she screamed. In our number 3 spot today, we have this Australian mom's discovery. As summer holidays were coming to a close and school was about to begin in Australia, one mom decided it was time to get her kids ready for the school year. She grabbed their backpacks in order to fill them up with new school supplies. That is when she grabbed one of her daughter's backpacks only to open it up and find her lunch bag that still had food in it from when summer holidays began last year. Of course, this is an honest mistake and pretty much completely harmless, aside from the mom having the horrific task of figuring out what to do with the rotten food and undoubtedly smelly Tupperware container. This mom definitely deserves some extra love after that. In our number 2 spot today, we have this mechanic discovery. A mechanic's TikTok has gone viral after a completely shocking discovery was made. His username is chaos_no, but I believe that the account is now private. Apparently, a customer had brought in her car to get it inspected after she believed her ex-boyfriend had placed a tracking device on it. The mechanic was unfortunately able to prove her fears correct when he found exactly what she suspected was there. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any update on what exactly happened after they found the device, and I'm not exactly sure what can be done in this situation, but I am very glad they found it, and really glad that the mechanic took the woman seriously and really searched for it. In the comments of the video, there were a lot of people sharing similar experiences, and I honestly had no idea that this was such a common occurrence. In the number 1 spot today, we have Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert is an NBA player with the Indiana Pacers. He was first drafted in 2016 by the Pacers, but was then traded to the Brooklyn Nets, where he played until he was traded back to the Pacers this year. When you're traded to a new team, there is a mandatory health screening that you have to go through. Caris was doing this screening and received an MRI when doctors discovered a mass on his left kidney. On January 25th, he underwent a successful surgery to remove this mass, and it was confirmed that it was a type of kidney cancer called renal cell carcinoma. It is said that Caris luckily doesn't need any further treatment, and he should be making a full recovery, which is amazing news. He explained how the trade potentially saved his life because he was feeling 100% healthy and had no symptoms telling him that anything was wrong. The mandatory screening for this trade let him know what was going on in his body, and I am so glad that they caught it in time.